I spent most of the first hour of our show yesterday focusing on the climate madness we're forced to cop under the leadership of Labor's prime porky teller Chris Bowen. From the environmentally destructive wind farms ploughing through pristine forestry and the trillion-dollar cost of replicating an entire transmission network to the fake outrage over selective reports on the Great Barrier Reef and the complete ignorance of nuclear opportunities too. Bowen is a smirking spin doctor of the worst kind who's tearing the financial heart out of our economy. But what if a smart and politically astute candidate could take Bowen out at the upcoming election? If we do have to have an Albanese government for a second term, maybe under a minority leadership, at least we could get rid of Bowen and his frighteningly blinkered view of our energy future and get ahead. Well, one such candidate has thrown his hat into the ring in Bowen's seat of McMahon. He's former Liberal Party executive, the man who took Scott Morrison to the High Court, now independent candidate for the seat of McMahon, Matt Camonzuli. And he joins me in the studio right now. Matt, thank you very much for coming in.
Great to be here, Chris. Thank you.
Can I just go back on something we've discussed at the beginning of the program, just on sex and transactivism? Tell me you support Donald Trump's definition that sex is binary, that there are only two genders and that governments need to act on this.
I'm certain there are only two sexes, male and female. There are only two. And I tell you what, if we got us confused about these things in, the electrical appliances space, we wouldn't know what to plug into where.
You're right. Exactly. There's a male input and a female.
It's very simple.
Yeah, receptor.
It's simple. I don't think it's ever been in any doubt up until more recently when everybody lost their mind and went bananas.
Yeah, exactly. Meanwhile, Australia Day, we've had a series of statues vandalised, beheaded, you name it, in Ballarat. I've just had a further report that a Captain Cook statue was vandalised in Randwick this morning with red paint splashed all over it. The same statue was vandalised last February as well. It's standard for Australia Day. What is wrong with some people?
Mate, I just think that, and it's possible that the education system is letting us down a little bit because, I do think some of this is coming from a certain place. But look, if you don't love Australia, I just can't understand why you're here. It's a beautiful country. It's the best country in the world. We've been let down by a successive group of politicians, but aside from the fact that our politicians are just a little bit nuts, the nation itself, the country, the people, the landscapes, everything about this country is beautiful. Yes. And the opportunity is just right there in front of us, and it's an amazing place. And I think we've got amazing systems of government. They're just not working right now, but the systems themselves aren't too bad.
Exactly.
We should be proud of that.
And we should be proud of it. And we are getting ahead off the back of the progress that was instigated by our colonial forefathers.
You can't get past the fact that the base of the country, the foundation of the country, is a good foundation. It's a good foundation, and it's given us the opportunity to have good lives. We stand on the shoulders of giants. A lot of stuff has started to go wrong in the last 5 or 10 years, but even as bad as it's been in the last 5 or 10 years, we're still doing reasonably well because of how good all the systems and structures that they built since colonialism.
Yeah. Now, if you people who will be voting in the McMahon electorate for the federal election, are you getting a little bit of a taste for what kind of bloke you're talking about here? Matt Camonzuli is his name. What made you get into the political ring in McMahon?
I grew up in Greystanes. I've spent most of my life in McMahon. It is my home. It's my hometown. I love the place. My first job was in Smithfield, also in the electorate. And I've spent a good chunk of my time there. I spend most of my time there. I live right next to it. So I'm a Western Sydney boy, and what I've seen is for too long. The Labor Party just doesn't get any competition in the space. The Liberal Party don't take that seat seriously. Never really have. No. There is no hope. There is no alternative. You've just got Labor wall to wall in parts of Western Sydney. And the Labor Party hasn't represented the working man or the working woman or the middle Australian for as far back as I can remember, certainly the last decade. They've just walked away from them completely. They're busy now trying to support lobbyists and vested interest groups and enriching the people whose house touches the harbour. And I don't understand how that's good for the people of McMahon, for people like me, Western Sydney people. It's not good. And what I want to see, I want to see some hope, some opportunity return. I started my business in a bedroom, Chris. I just, I had an idea, and Australia afforded me the opportunity to build that up into something spectacular, and I'm very proud of that. But I feel a sense of responsibility because when I walk around the hallways of the political world and the business world, I don't see a lot of people from McMahon, real people from McMahon, who've had real jobs and real businesses and really built things up, actually in a position where they've got a voice or an ability to give back. And I'm in that place, and I feel responsible to do something because I don't like what's happening to my home. People are struggling. They're really suffering. You go out shopping in places like Fairfield and you'll just see the grocery trolleys are so scant. People don't have the money for much more than potatoes and some eggs. They're really, really struggling to put food on the table and pay the bills, like the energy bills. People like, we've got our old mate Bowen, running around, in flights of fancy, turning our grid into Swiss cheese, bribing companies to stay in Australia, bribing voters with $275 that just disappears into the power bill.
So how much of Bowen's destruction of our nation and his ideology on climate has contributed to you running?
Look, I want to see authentic, real people who care about Australia and who want to go back to a place where there's a fair go, mate. So Chris Bowen, I find he's offensive to me because he talks about all of these things while he's drinking premium beers on social media platforms and making fun of his electorate because we've got this crazy beer tax and his silly ideologies and everything else he believes in, and not paying attention to getting cheap and reliable energy, which is core to getting living standards in this country back to a place where we're comfortable. Nobody's comfortable.
Which is why I'm not comfortable with the fact that they don't open their eyes to nuclear. I'm not suggesting adopting it. I'm saying we should be having a task force looking at the possibilities, the opportunities, the next frontier of technology to work out whether it suits Australia. We should be doing that at the very least.
At a minimum, we should be looking at every opportunity to get the cost of electricity down so that we become the energy superpower that we once were again. I've never seen a renewable energy superpower anywhere else in the world. There isn't one.
There is
They
none.
keep talking about this renewable energy superpower nonsense. Yeah. It's gibberish. Yeah. It's garbage. Yeah. We are an energy superpower. We've got the capacity for nuclear. We've got the capacity for coal. We've got the capacity for gas. We've got the capacity for so many ways to get energy costs down. And you've got to look at all options. You've got to look at nuclear.
And here is Bowen taking the South Australian template on renewables as some kind of guide to our future. Well, let me tell Bowen and let me share with you the latest from South Australia. This is from the Australian Business Review. South Australia could draw on emergency diesel supplies this summer after the country's energy regulator approved a last-ditch request to use 2 French-owned power generators to back up a grid that is increasingly struggling to coexist with record renewable penetration. Diesel generators, Matt. Give me a break. We are joking.
Yeah, look, it's beyond sensible. Everybody who's currently driving around in things like electric cars are basically fossil-powered cars, right? Fundamentally.
Built and powered.
Without doubt, they're built and powered. And what we're doing is we're exporting to other countries our energy capability. We're exporting the materials they're using to create cheap energy for them, right? And when they're importing back either our own stuff or, worse than that, things are so cheap overseas that we're importing back products that are made overseas. And I think the world's changing. Donald Trump's changing the world. Whether we like it or not, whether we're ready for it or not, the world is changing.
And we're going to be left behind, Matt.
We are already being left behind. Go shopping in McMahon. Go shopping in Fairfield. Go shopping in Blacktown. Go and have a look and see how far left behind we are. And Chris Bowen sitting there, buying diesel generators to supplement the energy grid that he's broken.
Joke.
And I wonder, on that diesel, are they paying the fuel excise on that as well? And then the GST on top?
Yeah.
Is that where this is going?
Yeah. As an old Fairfield boy, I'm so glad that Chris Bowen will have a little bit of mature political nous challenging him in this federal election, because as you said at the beginning of this interview, it's been Labor unchallenged for decades in that area of southwestern Sydney.
Unchallenged. Yeah. It's just, the Liberals treat it as though it's dead red. And you know what I think? I think if the Liberals was really smart, they'd look at the fact that if they went back to their core principles, their core values, their we believe statement, Menzies we believe, and the stuff that Menzies used to talk about when he formed the Liberal Party, places like McMahon and places like Chifley and places like Greenway would respond very well to that. People come to this country for opportunity.
Aspiration, inspiration. They're not getting it from the current government.
That's right. People don't come here to get free stuff. They come here to buy a house, and no one can afford to buy a house anymore. You can barely afford to rent one. Right?
Exactly right, mate.
We have big problems.
I can only wish you all the best in McMahon. I will follow your campaign and follow what you're standing for, and I can just implore people to listen to what Matt Camanzuli has to say and compare it with what Chris Bowen offers you. Chris Bowen is actually, as I say, ripping the financial heart out of the Australian economy. Let's be very careful. Matt Camanzuli, thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.
Independent candidate for that seat. A crucial seat. No, it's not a marginal seat. It's not somewhere you should look for any kind of change. The pundits won't be looking that way. I'll be looking towards that because I know the people of Fairfield and Smithfield and Greystanes. I lived there for most of my life, and I know they know a liar when they hear and see one, and that's exactly what Chris Bowen is, the climate czar and the chief liar. Vote for Matt Camanzuli. I couldn't think of a better candidate in that seat.